Oh, slightly disturbed at the last thing I heard Adam say before the countdown happened, but we don't need to get into that. Let's instead recognize and take a look at our awesome sponsors. See if Rick can outdo the music this time. I'm going to bet on the music. Let's see what happens here.
Right. Jazz Cabbage Cafe is sponsored by the Botanical Company, Redemption Cannabis, Real Leaf Solutions, the Detroit Nutrient Company, GreenMI.com, Custom 420 promos featuring Culture Clothing.
That was pretty good, man. I mean, the music was quite a challenge.
Over into the mic there, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the technique. Now.
Whiskey Tango starts us off as the viewer. So, Jazz Cabbage, thanks everybody for starting off here with myself, Jamie Lowell, Rick Thompson, Mr. Ashbash, Adam Brook, and Anton Harb. Welcome, everybody. So, I thought Medical Mondays was pretty good last night with Willie Peso. He's a good dude.
Good time.
We talked about the range of possibilities between a little puff on the tip and full on giraffe head.
Well, I must have missed that conversation.
I don't think you were definitely a part of it, man.
I think
I'll tell you, I had gone over your head, but you were definitely a part of it.
I had a 300 milligram gummy shortly before that show, so I don't remember much of that show.
So, all right, it was cool nonetheless. I just wanted to recognize that. I think that's pretty good. He's one of these guys that has his a little bit in the caregiver world, activism, advocacy, and then he's also participating in the commercial system in a certain way that seems to make sense, bringing some qualities, good products, and culture into that world. So I always like to appreciate that. Did we get this one? There you go. I don't know what that's all about. There you go. So I wanted to talk about some of the bills that are going on. We're going to have Josey on a little bit later, talk about Glenn and some of the stuff that organization is planning to do at Hash Bash, which invariably will have us talk a little bit about the weekend, a little pre-discussion. Live Well is likely buying Skymint. Wow. And Skymint just bought, what was it, the number 315, yeah. That's going to be a big ass organization there.
Well, I will tell you what, that Live Well is going to take on a lot of debt because Skymint's been borrowing like crazy to make their huge production facilities and expand their retail footing. So I know they're going into this with their eyes wide open, but I mean, Skymint's such a damaged brand. The only way to save it in Michigan is if it got gobbled up by somebody.
And eventually all this debt's going to come due, and the reality is that we won't be hearing these names in a couple of years anyways, I have a feeling.
It'll be weird to see how things shake out, that's for sure. But so we got these bills I want to talk about. I wanted to bring up 5512 again. I know that we've talked about it a few times. Status hasn't changed from it being heard once in the Judiciary Committee. Waiting a second hearing.
Explain 5512.
I will. And also, I do think that there's been some movement on the side of those pushing it to want to work with those of us who have concerns about it. And that's going to be ongoing. Zara Abbas, in conjunction with one of the representatives we've had a discussion with, has arranged a meeting with one of the judges, or I think is a retired judge, and maybe now lobbying on behalf of this for the judges. And he was in the drug court himself. And we have a meeting with him tomorrow, so that should be interesting. And I will go over the 5512 real quick and what we generally don't like about it. And then the part I want to hit on, though, is like the concern that we came across during some meetings with lawmakers recently who are well-intended, who are basically on our side if you have a conversation about most other things, cannabis and rights, but who want the drug courts to remain so much so that giving up some of the things that we discuss as an issue is okay with them in order to continue to get federal funding and to keep these courts alive. And so federal funding is being pitched as one of the things that could be lost if people are still allowed to use their medicine.
Well,
Go ahead, Adam.
So I have a question really about that aspect of thing, because I've been challenging this threat of federal money for years. They're afraid to lose federal money they've never been threatened to lose, right? This is about the federal funds that come to the drug court. And if they were to get rid of the drug court, they would lose that money and wouldn't have it in their court system in order to fund the drug court. I don't think that any federal entity anywhere has ever said quid pro quo when it comes to money and marijuana.
Well, I will say that in 2019, one of the biggest organizations, I have to look up what they're called. I will here in a second. That offers these grants. It works with the feds or is a Fed department, and they are called Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Right.
SAMHSA. In 2019, they were specific, and they did say that if you allow people to use medical marijuana, then funding is risked.
They won't give you their grant money.
Yeah, they were clear about that.
Right. We're not talking about grant money here. We're talking about federal
No, but
money.
wait, and the story changes afterwards.
Well, the story is grant money as far as like the discussions that we've had with this lawmaker and stuff like that. But aside from that, obviously many states have got some kind of like recognition of cannabis and active in medical cannabis programs and stuff. So this comes up in a lot of places. And there was an incident with a school district in Maine that ran into this conflict, and there were just too many people that use medical marijuana. I guess I don't know the whole story, but they appealed to this federal agency or to this grant giving agency and said, hey, this is an issue, this is just too widespread here and stuff like that. They actually they loosened their policy. They revised it. I think 2021, if not 2020, but I read a 2021 article about it. There was a state agency in Pennsylvania that noticed this and wrote a memo about it and spun it around. That letter came up. There was an article written by Marijuana Moment. Those guys keep an eye on this stuff really well. And they showed where the distinction was and the loosening of this restriction was and the removal of the language. And you're left with saying that as long as the money from this grant is not used for certain things, such as acquiring cannabis, prescribing cannabis, they have a list of stuff. Simply just letting somebody to continue to use their medicine isn't one of the things they take concern with. And so if those funds are not used toward perpetuating, using this cannabis, I guess, then there shouldn't be a conflict with the grant.
We're super deep into the subject. Explain what the bill is for people who may not be in Michigan and are listening. Can you?
Yeah, I can, and I'm sorry. It kind of slid that way with Adam's question and stuff like that, and that is kind of new stuff that we haven't talked about here about this. The old stuff about this bill, this would create a scenario where the older Judiciary Act would take superiority over the newer Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, so that some of the specialty courts could have more control over people involved in those courts. Some of the arguments are that it's voluntary and some other things that's irrelevant as far as what the weight of the court should be able to do. And it would allow judges to determine if somebody's condition was severe or significant enough in the judge's opinion to continue to use their medicine. Now, ironically, even that judiciary discretion would have been too much for the 2019 version of the policy for that grant giving organization that I mentioned. They said no use of it. So even like this limited discretionary amount wouldn't have flown with them, which I find to be a little ironic and interesting. So then one of the co-sponsors of the bill offered an amendment that would say if you're in possession of one of these cards, at the time of, and I'm not sure what the starting time is. Rick and I talked about this earlier. I don't know those details. I'm sure it's written down and we could look at it, but you're in the process. If you have the card by the time you're starting the process, maybe arrested, maybe convicted, I don't know. You can continue to use your medicine without issues from the court. Okay, that's good. That would also violate the strictness of the 2019 policy. But what we don't like about that is what if somebody starts having a need for cannabis medicine after being in the process that far, and gets diagnosed with cancer, starts having seizures, needs it for chronic pain to avoid the same drugs that they might be in that drug court for, or whatever those circumstances are. We don't want to see somebody have to just be denied just because they're in that scenario. So the other issues are, of course, that we don't think cannabis should continue to be treated as one of the drugs on the list that the drug courts should be, challenged with having to deal with. And we also think that it's helpful and useful and proven to encourage recovery and people getting off dangerous substances. And that the courts should be more updated in their approach and offer the best help to those most in need. So that's essentially it, I think. If you want to add some, Rick, please do.
That's a lot, actually. So to summarize, we have a bill here in Michigan which would allow the drug courts to deny people the opportunity to use medical marijuana, even though we just had a court decision last year that gave them, that reinstated their ability and their right to do so. And we oppose this bill because we don't think that the drug court should be able to deny people this opportunity. The drug court specifically have judges that want to be able to decide this person's illness is severe enough, I'll let him use medical marijuana. This person's illness is not severe enough, so I will deny them. And we think that's discriminatory. And the argument that they use in order to justify removing the ability to use medical marijuana is because of denial of federal funds. And what Jamie just talked about was both of the primary people who give funds to support drug courts have policies which would not put their program in jeopardy here in Michigan. So they could continue on as they currently are and not risk anything. Actually, Jamie,
I didn't mention the Toohey case, but that's a big part of it. I'm glad that you did. They talk about it, some of the people in support of 5512, as having quote unquote unintended consequences, meaning we should still be able to have control over people using cannabis. I can't believe that would stop that. We view it as a landmark decision.
I'm a judge.
We view it as a landmark decision that helped to that supports their patient rights and simply codifying that into law, although not that easy. I mean, given everybody involved in this and stuff, but from our perspective anyway, simply codifying that into law solves the problem. Somebody has their card. They get it at whatever point they're free and able to get it. Somebody gets their card, they can use their medicine without interference from the courts. That solves the problem.
There shouldn't be any discrimination between, you have no idea what Anton's suffering versus what I'm suffering, right? So we go to a drug court and the judge doesn't look over our medical file. At least I certainly hope they don't, right? Because that's HIPAA protected. There's no reason for that. And I may not be able to articulate exactly what happened to me that caused me all the troubles that I have. Anton, it's clear he's a veteran. He has clearly demonstrable issues. But we feel like there should be no discrimination. As long as a physician has said that I deserve medical marijuana for the treatment of my illnesses, I shouldn't have to rehash that diagnosis in a courtroom setting in front of strangers where there's someone typing my every word. So we're definitely opposed to this entire program.
It's judicial overreach, period. If I was a veteran in Veterans Court and they told me I couldn't use cannabis, I would violate that shit and they can just send me to jail, I guess. If they want to start, if they're in the business of locking up.
Well, this would also do that, right? I think a lot of these specialty courts come into play with this. We're talking about the drug court a lot, but Veterans Courts included. Go ahead, Adam.
I do wonder if a judge felt that I should not get my chemotherapy and should serve my sentence or go through his drug court. Could he order that I not get chemotherapy while I'm going through the drug court?
I don't think so. But again, some of the problem is
what's the difference?
Well, ignorance. I mean,
right.
We've spoken to many lawmakers who say, there's a difference between chronic pain and somebody who has regular seizures. Really? You can't really say, once somebody has their card, it's all conditions that are approved and they can use their medicine. I mean, that's, you don't have to even second guess or intertwine your own personal opinion as to whose condition is worse than somebody else's or something like that, which is ridiculous, of course.
Of the hundreds of different things that could qualify you for using medical marijuana, there are probably only about 12 or 13 named illnesses. The reason we have these other catch-all terms like chronic illness,
chronic pain,
chronic pain, to
muscle
catch
spasms,
every other thing. I mean, any car accident, that's not an illness. You can't really say car accident. So car accident falls under chronic pain. if you've been injured in a workplace accident, if you've been beaten senseless by your boyfriend repeatedly over years, and you have you have broken bones, if you're Evel Knievel, for crying out loud,
if you've had operations, man. I mean,
it doesn't mean it's not as severe as something else.
A lot of times we have, especially in Veterans Court, the VA pumps these veterans full of benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, antidepressants, opiates, every other damn thing. And the court will actually mandate that the veterans must take those medications. If we're going to mandate that we pump our veterans and people in drug court and people in mental health court full of these other poisons that have been proven to harm, what are we doing here with the cannabis issue? It doesn't make sense. It's
the logic being predicated on a maybe, right? Maybe they'll take away our federal funding. Your rights are mine to trample upon, because I'm worried about perhaps getting federal dollars taken away from me. As Jamie just illustrated, the risk of that seems very remote, Adam.
With what I point out is no threat. There's never been a threat from the federal government.
Right.
So here's Mark Ryan, who was a victim of federal manager and in federal housing. They just came across some cannabis in his place, if I remember the story correctly, not even like any issue with it or somebody complaining or something. And they kicked him out. That's what happens sometimes when these conflicts arise. That's ridiculous. And Brad's suggesting any debilitating medical condition.
Well,
New York just went to that. Any medical condition where a doctor says that the patient can be
that's what it should be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now in Michigan, we do have a process in which you could add things, and it has happened.
They did it with PTSD. For the longest time, PTSD was not on the
Now,
list.
The very first psychiatric condition that was approved.
I would like to ask that those of you that are having this meeting with this judge tomorrow that I heard about,
Yes.
I wonder if that judge, how he would answer this. I wonder how he would respond if marijuana was prescribed as opposed to recommended.
Well, prescribed would require a federal mandate, because a prescription is controlled by
FDA,
the federal government.
No, not
approved.
a DEA prescription. That's a DEA prescription. I'm
Well,
just
FDA.
wondering about the word prescribed as opposed to, the judge doesn't need to hear that definition. But
What's interesting about that, and you're right, there's a big difference. There's a recommendation letter that's
it's a huge
required.
difference.
Yeah, and a prescription is something that has been a drug or something that's been FDA approved that requires the doctor to write the prescription for it, and they are not the same thing. I just want to say, interestingly enough, in the wording from the grant scenario that I described, it actually uses the word prescribe. It says the grants cannot be used to prescribe the cannabis or to purchase the cannabis. So it
Correct.
shows you how how complex this is, and how easy it is to be ignorant, I guess. And
The issue is this, that a doctor will write on his prescription pad what would be a recommendation to use a non-prescribed substance like an ointment or a natural herb or something. And he's telling you to do that as your doctor. I really wonder if they're not taking, if these judges feel that they don't have to take us serious as medicine because it's just a recommendation from the doctor.
Well, at this point, I don't think they're even concerned with recommendation versus prescription, although we think that's a valid issue to talk about. Their sole concern seems to be centered around financing. And for them, that's a winner argument, because they don't have to they don't have to make a stand on whether medical marijuana actually helps or the difference between the value of Michigan's law versus federal. All they have to do is say we're going to lose money, and that's their whole argument.
I bet the weed game would be happy to fund the courts if they want to tell the federal government to go fuck themselves with their money. I mean, the program's a great program. It seems to work according to their numbers, or it doesn't. But either way, they're going to run those numbers to keep that court going. We all know that.
Yeah.
and again, it's volunteer, but it's, first of all, that's not good enough to rationalize the judge making medical decisions. And second of all, it's volunteer, but it's volunteer against very serious felony convictions with several years of imprisonment attached. And I think there's a larger discussion about how inappropriately the war on drugs creates that scenario in the first place.
these judges have pointed it out, and Rick, you're right about the money. They don't want to lose this money because this money has nothing to do with the safety of the community, has nothing to do with the health of the defendant. It has to do with the staff of the courthouse, the judge's salary, the fact that the county's getting paid from the rental of the space, and this is a budgetary issue.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to the people in the drug court, this is as big a scam as it comes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we think it's very much should be a humanistic thing. You should be making a decision based on the best interest of the person in court, not just to put them through hoops to see if he'll jump high enough, but to make sure that they're healthy during out the entire process. And they've devolved it down to a dollars and cents thing as opposed to a humanistic thing, and that's really what we complain about.
And I understand the concept of like a veterans court where we have a court system that understands the world of being a veteran, for lack of a better term, just what that encompasses, and understands from a different point of view. But I'd make the same argument that same judge could be in a regular courtroom, being a regular judge, and have those same understandings as every other judge on the bench should have. You shouldn't need a special court for people that need special accommodation. The court should make that for them, no matter what the court is. No matter where it is, and no matter what accommodation you need.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you're in this regular court, we have to fuck you. You know, yeah, sorry.
Yep. No, and remember too that this is the legislature trying to get around a court decision, right? In Michigan, for those viewers who are maybe watching from outstate or are just not familiar, in Michigan, when you have a voter-directed initiative, that is the highest law of the land. So when the legislature puts in place a bill, it's not more important than what the voter-directed initiative said. So when we have a Supreme Court decision like we had in People v. Toohey, where they said if you have a card, you're allowed to use your cannabis, that overrules all of the drug court regulations already. So in order for them to beat that, they have to change our law. They have to go back and change the law that we passed by the people in order to give them the power to do this. So that's one of the reasons why they're going so hard at this, because they need a really tough, they have a really tough row to hoe. In order to change the law that we passed as a citizens-directed initiative, you need a 3/4 supermajority vote. That's 75% yes in the House and 75% yes in the Senate, and the governor has to sign it. So it's a very difficult process, which isn't accomplished very easily, and that's why the judges are trying to push this right now. We just got Toohey less than a year ago, so they're starting to see criminal defense attorneys taking issue with the drug court still denying people the opportunity to use medical marijuana. And when those things go to arbitration, the criminal defense attorneys and the client, they always win and the judges lose because of the Supreme Court decision. So this is their only fix to that. I think one of the things this begs too, Jamie, is a natural segue into a discussion about decriminalize or descheduling cannabis in Michigan.
Yep, 5877, the bill has been introduced by Rep. Robbie. We had him on just for the last few minutes of the last show, but that is really exciting. That's been a long time coming. That's been another thing that's confused people and taken a while for people to realize, you know, what it does and why we should do it, and just part of this difficult, long process. You know, it's.
Yep. In Michigan, the cannabis right now exists on the Schedule 1 controlled substances, but also medical marijuana exists on the Schedule 2 of the controlled substances list as well, despite the fact that it's legal here in Michigan, both for recreational and for medical purposes.
Yeah, I think it's called for 2. I think it's called pharmaceutical grade cannabis, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. And the reality is, we let people grow it in their homes, and walk around with it, and use it socially at events, and use it for medicine, and we tax it, and we do all types of stuff that how we don't typically treat controlled substances. It's just inappropriate for it to remain there. There's a glaring conflict in law. It's an older act, the Controlled Substances Act, I believe, of 1978, somewhere around there. And then subsequently, there's been these newer laws. These newer laws really cover a lot of ground as far as parameters and consequences and, you know, things like that people get concerned about when you're talking about ripping it off the controlled substances list, because it's connected to criminal codes, health codes, and then those things lose their ability to have cannabis as the basis for whatever.
So you have to select and go through and selectively edit all those pieces of law, Jamie, in order to fix this.
Right. But or it stays there and then it just dissolves when it's no longer connected to the Controlled Substances Act, I guess, when it's no longer on there to be connected to it. I don't know how that would work, but go ahead, Adam.
It's just kind of funny because it never belonged at number one in the first place.
Right.
It never belonged on the list in the first place. And it really doesn't matter if they take it off or not, because things are moving with it just where it's at.
Well, it still has consequences, and that's
I realize it does, but they're ignoring it. For the most part, they've ignored it in every state where it's happened. And,
right. There's been some stuff, but you're right.
Correct. And I'm just saying that's how full of hypocrisy this is that the government used it one way at one point, and now they've kind of realized, oh, well, they're changing the laws. Let's just leave it. Let's not worry about it.
Yeah, that's
it's the natural that needs to change. It's natural.
Well, and change is difficult, especially when you require a 3/4 supermajority. So you don't undertake something of this magnitude without knowing what you're getting into and without having sufficient support for it. So when we saw this bill introduced, the bill to affect the drug court, it had a ton of sponsors, both Democrat and Republican, because they were sold the line that the judges were just saying, we need to be able to do this. Drug court is a place where no drugs are allowed, and that includes cannabis. And of course, our immediate response is cannabis isn't a drug. We already decided that. Take that mindset out of your head.
Or not by this usage anyway. I mean, you could apply usage to drug where it's fine, but I mean, how they're talking about these substances are a different category.
They're equating it with heroin. They're equating it with meth and fentanyl. But the important thing to realize, too, when we talk about descheduling, is that even if it doesn't immediately have a direct effect on certain aspects of law, it is a signal to all aspects of society that we have begun this change. That means insurance companies, employment situations, universities, government jobs. It's okay for them to not test for cannabis because it's no longer on the schedule. When their mandate from whomever it is giving them a mandate is to make sure that scheduled drugs are not allowed in the workplace. And in Michigan, especially if it's off the schedule, I think from a workers' rights perspective, that gives workers a greater degree of ability to sue employers for discriminatorily, punishing them for cannabis use on or off the job. Our attorney general certainly has said that she thinks that workers have rights and privileges when they are not at work to use cannabis because it is now an adult use substance here in the state. So I think taking it off the schedule helps our people in so many different ways.
People don't get their driver's licenses, professional licensing issues, still child protective services.
Yeah.
I would think once it comes off the schedule in any way, shape, or form, it would probably start to disappear from the testing world.
I hope
There'd
so.
be very little reason to do it, which means that you won't be able to buy a drug test to do a workplace drug test.
Right, and the employment issues then start getting resolved based around that issue.
Because they just follow. And, drug testing, pre-employment drug testing didn't become an issue until insurance companies started telling companies that we'll give you a discount if you drug test your employees. There was no correlation to harm.
Thank you, Father Joe, for your comment there. I will say this, too. Companies that do a lot of hiring really want those pre-employment drug tests to be less expensive. And if you don't have to test for cannabis, that's the best way to get our results is by making it a less expensive pathway to do the job that they're already spending money to do, right?
And the employer benefits from having a larger talent pool.
Much larger.
Employees
from. Exactly right. And of course, we're no longer locking people out of the workforce. We have all these unemployment numbers, which really don't mean anything at all because most of the people that aren't seeking jobs anymore are not counted in those employment numbers. And many of them are cannabis users. We have an estimates of as high as 50% of the adult population in the United States of America is a regular or occasional cannabis user. And Sunshine Daisy writes on her note, if a child tests positive for THC at birth, CPS is automatically called. I think in a situation like that, if cannabis is removed from the schedule of controlled substances,
gives a parent that's why they do that. And also just to add, there's protocol already for like if the parent and the child are addicted to opiates, They don't get called for that. There's protocol that they go through for that. That's weaning off. You know, they know that there's going to be.
It's a medical process.
Yeah. They tell what to
Not a
expect.
law
And there are certain
enforcement one.
stages of like when they quit getting used or whatever, and you know, and but cannabis, oh no. And in fact, you know, I mean, we are joined here by Josey Scoggin. We're going to talk a little bit more about some legislature too, and get to a lot of the stuff that Josey wants to get to, which I'm excited about. But Josey knows about the stories of people getting shit when at birth, when giving birth, and the child has cannabis in the system.
Yeah.
So we ran for almost 3 years after I birthed my daughter, a crisis center where people who had all over, right? So we had people from Indiana, we had people from Ohio who were experiencing CPS at the time of birth. And so we provided through Camoran Law, through Covert Law Firm, through Nichols Law Firm, actually at that time, free legal support and Cps Intervention during that time. Maria Green was extremely helpful in that area as well. We saw over 100 women in those 3 years. And what's crazy is 100% of the women that gave birth in Indiana had no CPS intervention at all. And I had 11 pages of documentation. I'm both visibly and obviously disabled. I had 11 different doctors saying, hey, Josey should smoke pot, right? And I still got a CPS investigation. My case was open for 4 days. It was closed at a category 5, which means no evidence was found. But it was traumatizing for all of us. And I had 3 attorneys on board with me, and we had I was very certain that I wanted to breastfeed my daughter, right? And I did. I breastfed my daughter for 4.5 years, in case you needed more evidence that I was fucking crazy. But during this time, I found that I was the luckiest, right? The fear really never goes away. I had no CPS intervention. They didn't threaten to take my kid. I never went to court over it. But I'm consistently petrified of her going to the school and telling them I'm growing tomatoes or some shit. Not that I am, officer, but...
You know, I had my kids taken away for a week by CPS when they were growing up. It wasn't cannabis related, but it was extremely traumatic for myself, for my wife, and for them as well. They were just infants, just babies. But they put me through a lie detector test, did all kinds of crazy shit. It was one of the worst experiences of my life that week.
Yeah, so to do something that stops
power.
that from happening, is a good move. So sorry to hear about that.
And this idea that people think that CPS intervention doesn't happen in Michigan anymore is fucking wrong.
People still get felonies for small-time cannabis activity in Michigan. It doesn't happen as much, but it does happen.
Yes,
I just want to jump in real quick. I had a CPS intervention over a legitimate issue had it turned out to be a real crime. I mean, CPS and those issues would have been in my house. But in reality, they came in, saw that there was nothing going on. But before they left and closed the case, CPS demanded that I put a lock on my office door so my children could not get into my office, because that's where I kept my cannabis. Now, they weren't called into the house for cannabis. That's not what the call. That's not why they were brought into the scenario. But the reality was that while they were here, they decided that before I could get my children back, because they, of course, removed the children. My child was being breastfed at the time and all that. Before they could come back, I had to have a lock on my office door. That's how petty it's become.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, they are all powerful. You must obey, or because they have your kids. They have your fucking
Shenanigans
kids.
pointing out how Native Americans are regularly treated.
We had a case up in Big Rapids where the family was camping. They were long-term. They didn't have permanent housing, and that much was true, but they were camping. It was summertime. It was a Native family of 6, and they removed all the children for not having access to running water, for not having access to electricity. Now, the issue when we're talking about Native families is that they are supposed to go back to the tribe, or at least separation is the very last option. And if you are a part of a tribe and you are being investigated by CPS, make sure that you're getting that investigation done by the tribal leader, by CPS in the tribe. Your tribe's there to support you, and if it wasn't for the tribe, that family would have been separated for a lot longer. So there's no joke. And I think we're all doing an enormous disservice to believe that CPS follows guidelines or follows rules, or that what happens in one place will happen to the other. Just because your sisters had a CPS case and they were fine doesn't mean that you will be the same.
And you never know what's going to trigger them to treat you harder than something else. You could have just said something offhandedly that you didn't even understand was bad, and they focus on you.
And what we found out when the Greens went through their case is that they had a policy for marijuana, medical marijuana patients that were parents, and that they just weren't actively A, teaching that policy, or B, following their own policy. And it created a big whirlwind where thank fucking God that they went on Good Morning America, and they made it a very big deal. And that Maria was a preschool teacher, and that Steve had seizures, and that this was a very easy cut dry case that still dragged out for months. But without the Green case, I think that nothing we would have done at Sons and Daughters would have ever been possible.
Green being a reference of Bree Green, Free Bree was a very big rally cry. It was a national story.
It was mentioned on Last Week Tonight. John Oliver.
CPS took the child away, took baby Bree away. And by the way, Bree's been restored to her family for a number of years now. And we see posts every once in a while on Facebook of how Bree and how big she is and how she's doing. And it's wonderful. But we did protest outside CPS offices. Josh Covert, the attorney, combined with other legal eagles, really did a hero's job.
It was very cold that day, if I remember.
Who was that?
It was very cold that day, if I remember.
It was that day, and poor Josey was there in just a small little skirt.
Yes, we all remember the photo. If people talk about that, it's the last time that we were all together and united on a front. And he's very serious about that. He doesn't even believe that legalization was as united as a front as returning Bree Green to her family. And I don't think he's wrong.
I think that you're right. When you look at something like separating a child from their parents, everybody can get behind that, no matter what your political affiliation. But legalization was a lot more controversial, not because of what legalization stands for, but the method by which you're enforcing it. Adam, I know you're trying to get in.
Yeah. No, I mean, when I was in the joint, the Bree case, the Green case was big, and the most evil screw. I mean, she was just an evil bitch. Actually came up to me and said that she thought that baby Bree should be returned to her parents. Now, she didn't agree on legalization. She was pretty anti-drug, but she saw this case as everybody else did. And, I mean, I still don't think she was a human being, but it did lend some human qualities to this screw that fucked with me incessantly. So, even the most person you wouldn't think was on that side of the baby realized that wasn't the way to do it.
So Josey's contention that was really the last time we were all unified, all in the state, might not be wrong, babe.
Well, that's a kind of an issue that could do it and doesn't have the same kind of areas for disagreement as their broader cannabis issue does. I just want to go back to Richard's statement right here and just point out, this is why I really hate that stupid warning label that's mandated by law on cannabis products for pregnant people. It makes it seem like it's shameful to even think about using cannabis, for those people, but many people use it positively, and it might scare some of them off. That's one of the things I really like. So
read Richard's statement, though, Jamie.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. My wife with our first child was suggested by her doctor to smoke marijuana to help with nausea during pregnancy. He then did follow up with Indian Health Services, so maybe that.
I think that was in reference to us talking about how Native tribes can help out. This is the label that Jamie's talking about that we hate so much. It's in this box here, contained on the bottom of this wonderful, super awesome Redemption cannabis doobie that I've got there. But I'll read it for you. Here in Michigan, they're required to put this on the labels. Use by pregnant or breastfeeding women or women planning to become pregnant may result in fetal injury, preterm birth, low birth weight, or developmental problems for the child.
I'm not sure that's even factually correct. That's the real problem, is that's reefer madness is what that is. That government requires reefer madness.
Now, and let's make sure that all the people in Michigan know that was put on these labels as an act of the legislature. They passed a bill to force that on the labels. That's not an action. Hi, Nicole. That they did not. This was not an action taken by the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. So don't blame them for this. Blame the Republicans who control both the House and Senate when this was pushed through.
Right there, he's clarifying it was an 80-year-old German doctor.
Of course it was.
Wow. 80-year-old German doctor, as we're following the story.
Wait,
who
an 80-year-old
recommended
German doctor
using
probably had used cannabis as a young doctor.
Not a dumbass, probably.
His child isn't that young.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I will tell you that, labels are important things to have. That's one of the reasons why we're fighting so hard for this remediated cannabis label, which is there's a hearing on Thursday this week to talk about putting a label on cannabis packaging that would indicate remediated. You can see right here on this label from this redemption joint that I have on the bottom, it's got a little triangle that illustrates the fact that it has THC. That's required by law. There are some other statements here on the label required by law, including the tracking number and who grew it and when it was tested, all valued information. But there's room on here for another little label, either on the packaging itself, right? Like this little triangle is where you're like on the packaging, or on the label that they affix at the time of sale, like this right here. There's room on packaging for them to say this product has been remediated. And I don't need to prove scientifically that it hurts me to want to know that. There's no reason for us to have any proof of damage. I want to know it, and that's good enough.
Yep. When you go into the grocery store and you want to buy an orange, they have an organic orange and they have a non-organic orange. And it is my right as the consumer to determine which I want. I'm not saying one orange is safer than the other or one is better than the other. It's just my right as a consumer.
Are we slipping into the remediation discussion?
Well, did you want to wrap up? Because I was actually doing that to you, Jamie.
That's
we
on the
should wrap
list.
up
You know,
a
I'll tell you
previous
what, there
conversation.
are these other bills, and we did bring them up last night in Medical Mondays also, but 5871, 5766, 5871 would allow transfers between facilities that don't exist currently, and 5766 would allow the school district and not the decision-making city, township, village leaders decide how zoning would work for cannabis businesses within 1,000 feet of the school.
Right. So the story on that is, of course, there's 1,000-foot no-fly zone essentially around schools in the federal district. But many cities in the state of Michigan use a smaller definition, a 500 feet or a waivable variance on that particular thing. This would allow the schools to decide whether they want to accept a cannabis business within 1,000 feet, not the municipality issuing the license. And that's a transfer of power we haven't seen before, Jamie.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I guess I understand why they did it. It's something that sounds like a good idea to some people who are ignorant, as we were kind of discussing, not even necessarily ill-intended. You can kind of pitch it.
It's a result of a story from Mr. Hasbash's backyard from that Royal Oak School.
Yeah.
Well, here's my question. A lot of schools, like here, our school district reaches a lot of different municipalities that are not necessarily in this municipality that the school is in. And our school board has representation from all areas of the school zone, I suppose, or whatever it would be considered. So there are people making decisions that don't even fucking live there. They don't even live in the municipality. They didn't vote according to this. They didn't choose that ordinance. So that would be my issue with it, right? Like, you guys don't even live here. You don't participate in paying taxes here, or maybe you do minimally. But the right, according to Michigan, has always been for the people that live in that municipality, right? That's over 60% of Michiganders had voted that.
They're elected leaders to that community. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Didn't Adam tell us the school board's a gateway to politics in Michigan? I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
Adam
it is.
did
It's
say
the
that.
easiest way to get elected to a political seat. Takes the least amount of votes in most communities.
And it's easier to jump from one elected seat to another as opposed to starting brand new at like a state representative level. You know, you want to build yourself up to that point as opposed to just trying to jump right to that.
So Brad asks, is there any movement on 5300, 5302? Earlier, the end of last year or so, Linder said he thought that they'd be firing stuff back up again around March. That was in the paper. I don't formally know about it, but I do know that there's been some people that are concerned and have been spreading the word around that they believe there's been some action. Rick might have some news.
So just last week, there was an article in which MCMA representatives were quoted, I think Shelley Egerton, and she specifically said this is why we need the caregiver bills to pass. She was pushing for it in that article. According to the people that we talked to, I still don't think that they have the votes. And right now, Steve Linder, who was the primary driver of this legislation, is persona non grata in the legislature because of the investigation swirling around this dark money account by the former Speaker of the House that Steve had a lot to do with. So you're seeing now a different face on this team. The other thing is the money that was being supposedly channeled through the Steve Linder connection to the Republican National Committee, or Republican States Committee, which would then go to candidates, is not going to be welcome anymore because everybody's under investigation. So nobody wants that kind of cash because they don't want to have to answer questions of someone later on. So the incentive that they had for people to participate in their program's kind of gone. But I mean, at any stage of the game, something crazy can happen. We know this to be true. We don't have to wait till lame duck. They can slide something in last day before they go to spring break or summer break. They've done that shit before.
All right, so real quick before we get to the remediation stuff, just to keep on track a little bit. The 5871 and allowing the transfer between facilities. Last night, Adam brought up and it seemed to make a lot of sense about, I had not even I knew of it, not really even looked at it, not heard much about it. Adam's assessment that the ability for places with several retail stores to be able to move between them and others too, perhaps for different reasons, for selling inventory under certain circumstances to somebody else even could be a thing. But particularly those who have many locations like around the state to be able to move inventory around as needed could be beneficial. Of course, those would be a lot of places with many locations are the large money interest and it benefits them. There's something in that. Representative Hawk is the one that introduced it and running it through his, ramming it through his committee again. So I mean, I don't know if it warrants the same type of. There, Amanda's joining us. Positive vibes to Amanda's grandmother. She's posted about some health stuff going on.
Positive vibes indeed.
Anyway, so it seems fishy, but if that's something that we have to concentrate on in the midst of these,
we're going to have to send Rick in on this one, or
well, yeah, I think I agree with you though, Adam. I think that it as far as allowing the transfers, it sort of makes sense. The pathway exists, Howard, to do that.
I thought about it a little longer after I threw that out there because this would help the consumer in order to keep those products fresh. Because now, if I got a store up north and I'm down here and I can transfer my inventory around.
If vape pens are going good by the Ohio border, but they're not doing it up north, you just want to transfer inventory from where you're not selling it to where you are selling it, right?
Yeah.
So that way you're always keeping inventory fresh. By the way, this still transfers would be required to use the secure transport system, which means it's expensive to do. So you wouldn't be doing this just willy-nilly. You'd only do this if you had to.
If there's some places stocked up on something and it's not moving and another location is selling the shit out of it, that they might want to then pay it a little bit to get it down there. I mean, I can see it being functional in some ways.
I would add that part of the problem with all these things that we actually like, especially like Jaden's bill and things like that, is that if we start weighing these bills and we have the ones we like and the ones we don't like, eventually some of the ones we don't like are going to get tagged to this group and they're going to come forward with this whole group of bills.
And they're going to think they can negotiate that stuff that we've designated that we like.
So far, outside of Jaden's bill, I can't think of anything that I have to have.
Deschedule.
You know what?
Yeah.
We've lived under the lie of scheduled pot for the last 80 years. I don't have to open the act and bring in these other bills with it. That concerns me.
Descheduled doesn't open the act, does it?
Descheduling is a whole separate thing. But my big concern is that anything that opens to a vote where they can get their 3/4 means that they can add something that we don't want. Even if we have to give up something, it's that horse trading we do.
Right, opening it up becomes a risk, no matter.
A risk because
Yeah.
they're gonna say, you know what, we couldn't
Yeah,
get
we'll
all
give you
those
that.
bills, but we could get one of those bills in.
And there's certainly people in Lansing that are willing to do horse trading. This is what they're part and parcel to their job description as lobbyists is give me this and I'll give you that in exchange. Whereas we as advocates are like, there's no negotiation. The caregiver bills are dead. You don't negotiate your way through that particular thing. Jaden's law just makes sense. I don't have to give you something for you to be able to support it. Just look at it on its surface and then vote yes, because that's the right fucking thing to do.
Right.
And you're in the state of Michigan.
Forget your three quarters. Jaden's bill should have 100%.
Yeah.
How
Exactly.
can you be against that?
Yeah.
The
Well,
more-
again, go ahead, Anton.
No, I'll say the more desperate that they get, the more carrots that they're going to offer.
Yeah.
Every time I hear Linder speak, I want to go take a shower. I feel like I feel dirty. And the more desperate that dude gets, the more bullshit he's going to spew and the more bullshit he's going to lobby for. And eventually they're going to offer enough carrots where people are going to start thinking, do we go for this or do we not? And that's the scary part.
But here's the thing, though. Here's what we have. There's where we can count a success amongst us. What we've shown them is that we are willing to kick up so much trouble that it becomes national news because our anti-caregiver bill rallies and things that we did were national news here in Michigan. This is an election year. What they don't want to do is piss people off about cannabis. They've see how many we can rally. And I think, although the Anderson Economic Group study from last year, which showed a $3.2 billion market here in Michigan for cannabis, of which about 1.7 billion is regulated market at this point. What I think it really showed them is that there's a lot of us that smoke cannabis and we're voters. So now it's much more difficult for them to take on something that's controversial. This is one of the reasons why Jeff Irwin last year said they want to get it done in 2021, because in 2022, it's just too hot of a potato. They just don't want to have those kind of tough conversations before people go to the polls. And now think about the time frame, everybody. August is your primaries, right? Yep. I mean, we're in March now, April, May, June, July, August, 5 months. So campaign trail is right around the corner. In fact, we've seen Leah Sklar and others out knocking doors already for candidates.
Yeah, she's working for Debbie Dingle.
She sure is.
Jen Bronson says no negotiating with bills that harm patients. I agree with that. Also, bills that were discussed and created and introduced without all the appropriate stakeholders and those with meaningful input at the table, as we've said quite a bit. Unfortunately, way too much.
Let's not forget, too, these big organizations and corporations have done a good job of burning some important people at the stake with the whole Veritas scandal. I mean, talk about dragging the MRA through the mud, and those types of perspectives aren't going to help their cause either. So, I mean, none of it's good. None of it is
just to reflect for our viewers. The Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association is one of two trade associations in the Michigan area that are large. The Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, we like them, they like us, we work together. The Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association is made up of what we think is about a dozen of the state's largest, hugest, biggest Hydra-style multi-state corporations.
Like 10 or 12 of them or something.
Yep, that predominantly cultivate cannabis. So they have recently, in some of the arguments that they've been doing, they put out a press release which accused the Marijuana Regulatory Agency of not being able to regulate itself because it didn't have the power to seize cannabis that they thought was illegally present at locations. And then the next week they assailed them too for thinking that they didn't have the authority to create the license type for the new Class A micro business, which gives a 300 plant allowance, which is up from 100 plants, and does some other things too.
But so they have taken advantage of the new licensing that the state's created by its power, afforded it by the MRTMA.
So 2 of these weeks in a row, the MCMA attacked the regulatory agency responsible for licensing their members, and it just doesn't make any sense. But I guess that's what happens when desperation comes in, or when new people are making decisions, y'all.
I get the impression, though, that that the MCMA purchased a package, and Steve Linder was running with it until Mr. Chatfield got in the way, And now they repackaged the deal, and somebody else is trying to deliver that football home, and they don't realize that their message is just not hitting.
Bullshit.
It doesn't make sense.
Hey, let's spin around this remediation stuff and then have a conversation about Josey, and I know some of the plans coming up for Hash Bash weekend and that type of thing. And I know Josey's might have some opinions on remediation also.
So
And yeah, go ahead, Rick.
For our viewers, remediation is a process by which mold or microbial agents on cannabis can be killed so that it will pass testing. Oftentimes, cannabis companies will produce cannabis that looks really good, but it fails. So they're given an opportunity in Michigan to remediate or to kill the bad stuff, retest. And if they get a positive retest, then they can put that stuff to market. The process of remediation includes various treatments like ozonation and X-raying, dipping. I've been told other different methods too. In Michigan, oftentimes cannabis cultivators will just go ahead and remediate their cannabis straight out the garden before it even goes to that test. Because what they'd like to do is make sure that that first test that they pay for is totally clean, so that it creates a clear pathway for them to get to market, and their merchandise is not held up, stuck, waiting for that remediation process and a second test. Now, in both of those instances, we're not really in favor of cannabis being subjected to that type of remediation treatment without notification for the consumer. I don't like that it takes place at all, but in the reality of this corporate cannabis world that we're in, remediation is one of those things that will be impossible for us to eliminate from the system. So the best we can do is tell people that they're going to have remediated cannabis prior to making that purchase. And that is the subject of a hearing that the Marijuana Regulatory Agency is going to have in 2 days on Thursday morning, where they take input from the public and from corporate entities on this possibility. I think that sums it up.
I think so. And Trish is saying, have any of you found info on any other crop that is remediated? I can't find anything. The only thing I know of for sure, without having any other reference or looking for anything as well, is remediating cannabis in Canada was a regular part of the state-run distribution of cannabis.
They X-rayed it. Yep.
Right.
I will say that when you look up remediated cannabis on Google, it'll show you hemp remediation whose sole purpose is to kill THC, right? So if you've got
to lower the numbers because they have a hot crop.
Yep, you've got a hot crop, right?
Okay, that solves some of the
controversy
controversy over whether or not it actually alters anything or changes anything. I guess if it's done for that reason.
Of course, that's different. Remediation's a title, not necessarily a methodology.
Right.
Ways to do it. So they may have a different process.
Right on.
We're talking about a percentage here, Jamie. That's the difference, though. We're talking
tobacco,
about
Christian says.
And how you might want to even manipulate testing at large for getting a different percentage.
Right. One thing I would add to what Rick was saying is that a lot of these growers, manufacturers, they have their own testing facilities. They've bought in gas chromatographs and they're testing. They know that their product's going to fail when it goes for that state lab test that they need in order to have the product sold on at market. So they're going in, they're cropping out, then they're going in remediating a crop. They know exactly where things are going to land, which is why they ended up going to Virtus, because they knew what numbers they were going to get on their THCs.
And passing the microbial test for sure. Yeah.
And so these guys are serious about what they're doing. There's big money involved here.
Yeah, Rick talked about, Jen's asking about the different methods, and Rick talked about some of them, the ozonator, the radiation. I don't know what they all are. There's
a Willow machine. Yeah, the Willow.
I think is an ozone creator. Isn't that correct?
I believe it's ozone.
And Brad's saying that many crops undergo irradiation or irradiation.
Right,
irradiation. Okay.
Irradiation.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's the term used from the Canadian process too, if I'm not mistaken. Irradiating
the whole argument with this is people, the medicinal portion of cannabis are the terpenes, right? I mean, we have the cannabinoids, but the terpenes are such an important part. And this boils down to basic chemistry. Whenever you take volatile oils and subject them to things such as heat or ozone, you're modifying the product. It's not the same product. Just by chemistry, just basic chemistry. And the consumer has the right to know. I can't think of a single good reason that any corporate entity who are using these practices can come up with that would trump a reason to not notify the consumer. It just doesn't make sense. We do that with our milk. Is your milk pasteurized? We do that with our fruits and our vegetables. And it just doesn't make any sense. There's nothing they can say.
The upcoming conversion oil process that's been proposed would include a label that says synthetic directly on the label because of the method by which it's derived, even though it's not proven that conversion oil is bad or unhealthy for us in any particular way. So if the MRA just simply follows
supposed to be the same molecule
proven process and allow a label for this particular thing to go on, then we can move forward. Josey, you were trying to get in there.
Yeah, it's not. We don't have food labeling as it is, right? We don't have to label things as GMO or not. And it's a very big movement, and a lot of people support it. And in California now, they label things that says, I don't know, I keep buying stuff. I have no idea that it's going to give me cancer. And the label says right there that California proposition, whatever, you know what I'm talking about. It prevents me. It does not stop me from buying cheap shit at all. They don't care. And I would be willing to bet it does not make a big change in this market like these guys are afraid of. In fact, I think they could do this and it would change fucking nothing.
But it would be a requirement, and there would be people who rise above because they don't do that.
It would be revolutionary in that way, absolutely.
It would allow the craft cannabis to just skyrocket.
Now, tell me this. How are they defining remediation? So remember, what they like to do is go find loopholes and be like, oh, it wasn't K2. It was some weird thing that we created in a lab that's like K2 but isn't. It's not remediation.
There's that, but there's a straight up issue that Rick brought up, that they're doing it at a time when it doesn't have to be recorded by anybody.
Right. What is it called? Like, how do they define it, though? How do they define remediation?
Well, what it does is, what remediation is anything that takes your...
I know what it is. What does the law say that it is? What does this bill say that it is? Because that's what's important, right? So if people skewed around this...
This would be for, I think,
this is a rules change.
Rules.
Yeah,
and it's same idea, though.
Right. But I think what we're talking about is a treatment that it's subject to that doesn't result in a change in state, right? So you're not, when you remediate cannabis, you're trying to turn it into oil. You're not trying to change it in any other way. You're treating it, right? Now, when people will oftentimes say, well, when you convert it to oil, that's remediation. No, that's a change in state. You're now changing it from a solid plant matter to a liquid, which is then, further processed. So that's not a remediation process, even though it does accomplish the same thing that remediation does. It's not. It's not intended to. So my definition is a treatment that's applied to it that doesn't cause a change in state, but that does affect either contents of or things upon the plants.
It'll be interesting how the state defines it will be how they can enforce it, right? So if they define it in a way that covers these many things, that's great. But if they don't, there's so many ways for these guys to scoot around it and say, hey, it's not remediated, it's whatever, it's radiated with whatever.
Smartest lawyer wins, right? Joe's smartest lawyer wins, yeah.
I think that's what they're doing. These are not good dudes. I don't want to smoke remediated weed either. I want my shit labeled. And I think this big lobby against it makes no sense because it doesn't really, the people that are buying it, for the most part, aren't going to change their habits for a cheap bag. That's just how it rolls. And a lot of these guys, I'm from a border town, right? So like, these guys are paying $70 an eighth all day long for remediated cannabis on your boycott list, and they have no idea. They know nothing about it.
One guy one time told me, we take all of the stuff that has low THC, we just send it to the border stores because they'll buy anything at the border stores.
Yeah, right. They do. They do. They do in the black market and they do in the dispensary. I'll say that.
But that, to me, that just goes to prove how big the market truly is, because if there were enough outlets so that the people of Indiana could stay the hell in Indiana, the people of Illinois could stay there, the people in Ohio could stay there, and the people in Michigan could drive wherever they want and get whatever they need, there's business for everybody. Mm-hmm. The problem is when you make it millions of dollars to get into business, then you got a whole game to be played.
The other thing is, Josey pointed out very rightly that it probably won't make much but a small ripple in the purchasing style. However, if you're a highly leveraged corporate entity with a dozen retail outlets and a gigantic bill to pay for those, plus you also started a cultivation facility because you thought you could vertically integrate and didn't realize how fucking tough it was. So now you got $70 million in debt for that too. Even a tiny fluctuation in your income stream can really translate to the difference between being, red or black on the balance sheet at the end of that quarter, and you have people to answer to for that. So they that's why they screw with us over caregiver stuff. Caregiver stuff is minuscule when it comes to the grand scheme of things. Yeah, caregivers do a good job, but based on the $1.7 billion the recreational market's doing already, come on, give me a break.
They want to push safety and health and all this regulatory function. There should be no reason why we shouldn't be notified. And you know what? I think Jen made a comment as well regarding consumer education, but I think there's also industry education that needs to happen. I mean, I've gone into some of these provisioning centers and the bud tenders have no idea when I ask if it was remediated. They look at me like I had 5 heads,
They know, they can tell, or somebody there can tell, depending on how they have their structure of their store, if that was the case. So oftentimes
it's on the computer. It's on the computer.
Yeah.
Sure. But not always, right?
No, it's listed on the computer. So
if it failed, it's listed. But if it was remediated before testing, it's not.
Yeah.
But you have no idea if it happened before it even went into testing.
Point being, though, is the consumer, if I want that information to make an informed purchase, I can't even get it from the provisioning center because the bud tender has no clue.
Worse than that, the state regulations don't allow you to see necessarily the weed you're purchasing before you purchase it because it's in an opaque container that you don't have access to. So now,
I was just at Harborside, and they had big jars. They measured it out in an old measuring cup like we used to in the old days on a flat type scale, and then right into the thing right in front of you. So I know that you can in some places.
Well, I believe to leave it has to be in a child safe package.
Yes, it does. You're absolutely right. Once it leaves the store, you're right.
Correct, and it has to be opaque. The point is, many places don't bother and they prepackage, and that means that you can't tell if it's been remediated because you don't actually see the weed you're purchasing. And Jamie points out some bud tenders don't even know what remediation is.
Yep.
Anton pointed out he's been to dispensaries where bud tenders don't know what remediation is. The problem is those aren't bud tenders; those are salespeople. Bud tenders know about remediation. Yeah. They can look at a bud and tell you what a remediated bud looks like, and they would never tell you to buy remediated pot over unremediated pot if they had it. But they're also now here's the problem: bud tenders are being turned into salespeople. Yeah. So in the morning at every one of these dispensaries, there's a meeting, and someone says, "Hey, we're heavy on Blue Dream." Yeah. Let them know Blue Dream. You send 6 people in with 8 different problems, and they're all going to get sold Blue Dream that day. Yeah. Welcome to the cannabis business, people.
Yep.
And Rick will tell you, they used to have those meetings in the furniture business, didn't they?
They certainly did.
If you were heavy on something, everybody knew it, didn't they?
Yeah. If you guys get 10 Lazy Boy sales in this next 2 days, we're going to give you a pizza party. That's how that shit went.
Yeah, let's not talk about.
You can't afford not to take that Lazy Boy home.
That's exactly correct. This Lazy Boy will love you like no woman ever did, sir. I promise you that.
And this isn't meant to cause an undue burden to businesses either. I mean, we're talking about notification, whatever the symbol, whatever the sticker, whatever it is. We're not asking you to stop the remediation.
It's gone through the process. It's then passed the test, which has to pass 2 tests at that point. And then a notification. And then we talked to somebody, and I forgot who it was from a different state, or maybe somebody on the comments let us know that wherever they are, it is labeled as remediated, and there is a big discount on it. So that people decide if they want some cheap cannabis, if they don't care.
Where?
That's fine. I don't remember where that was.
I want to know. That sounds cool. It sounds like a cool group.
It does.
Sounds like somebody that knows if it's fucking remediated or not. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, they'll be on the label, and then it's cheaper because of it. I mean, because it has mold to be exposed, so it's not worth as much now.
Yeah, mold spores can still trigger an allergy even if they're dead. So, still think we need to know.
Obviously, Brandy is fucking right. So the same people that are not that are remediating their product. It's all because they don't actually own the company, right? They have some investor that they conned into putting $20 million into it, and this thing isn't going to make $20 million.
Well,
Not immediately, not in the time that they think. They have lots of people.
Michigan's tough to grow in. We have a unique environment that makes it more difficult if you come from another state and you thought you had your shit dialed in,
Right.
and now you're really dealing with powdery mildew to a degree you never had before. So there's a lot of reasons why people would have to remediate, even if they're really good at their craft.
Look.
But damn, Joe's, I mean,
Well, we've all
yeah.
been to, you've been to a dispensary, you smell some weed, it smells like their dad bought that license and they've never grown weed before in their goddamn life, right?
Nope.
That smells like
like
a fucking
dentist's
insurance agent's closet. Like, Jesus Christ, there's nothing. And it worked. That's who got the license first, is all these crazy people that are currently remediating their weed.
but that's because remember this, Josey, as many people as you know that smoke weed, there are more new people smoking weed than there were people we knew. The masses have now come into this because now it's legal. Now there are people, and I don't mean Anton, but people like Anton who were straight shooters and followed the rules and did what they were supposed to do. And all of a sudden weed's legal, and you know what? I can smoke all the weed I want now. No problem.
Yep.
There's a lot more of them than there were people like you and me who really don't give a fuck what the law is. We're going to do what the hell we want because it's only weed.
Prohibition doesn't work. We'll smoke weed anywhere. Catch me and Adam smoking weed.
And Josey,
prohibition doesn't work.
Anywhere.
Jim Salame has joined us. Go ahead, Anton, and then we'll actually talk to Josey about some of the stuff she wants to.
No, I was just going to say, Josey's spot on. Most people will just walk in and they want that cheap sack of weed. That's just what they want. They're looking for a good deal. But you know what? There is a majority of consumers that want that information, and there's just simply no reason to not provide it. And I think that's the main basis of the argument.
And there's no reason to lobby against it because I don't think it's changing anything.
Right, exactly.
And you can't blame the bud tenders for not knowing about remediation. It's such a new thing. Plus, it's the dirty little secret of the industry. People that do it don't want anybody to know about it. They don't advertise that they do, and they're sorry that this was ever exposed. So you can't blame the bud tenders. They're just not trained on it. But I know we want to talk to.
So Scott's saying, do they do this in Canada? And we do know that they irradiate it in Canada, whatever that issue causes.
No,
I don't know if it's still going on, but we do know that, like, at a time when some of our lawmakers were invited up to look at one of those operations in Canada, that those were the reports, and it was
the reason remediation exists is because at one point, if you failed a test, you had to destroy your product. And this now allows you to fix it without having to destroy it.
Or you could just take it to Veritas, where they're notoriously taking your failed cannabis and automatically giving it a new one. And that's according to court testimony by marijuana regulatory agents themselves.
Listen,
Well, the turnaround with a passing test soon after it failed from somewhere else was a red flag. It repeatedly happened. Was a red flag that initiated an investigation. They then said, okay, so let's see the records that confirm that you followed these processes with these certain temperatures and so forth. And they were able to provide them. And that's where the concern came in about, well, we can't know for sure then if these are okay. If we don't know for sure if the process was worked properly. That's the basis of that case.
Yeah, we still allowed them to put their shit on the shelves after it failed. How much of that bullshit ended up on the shelves? Do we even know? I don't know if we even have a number.
The best thing about that whole
We
thing
know about some of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, how do we know these guys aren't lying? Like,
You know what I got in
that's
front of me
what
right
they
here?
would be doing, That's what we do at our shop.
I have a joint tested by Veritas Labs. I don't know if you can see it.
I have a couple too that I noticed
Look at it.
on
What
the
it's called.
packaging recently.
Yep, it's a joint tested by Veritas Labs on 9/15/21 with a harvest date of January 2nd, 2022. Now, if you harvest in January of 2022, how could you have actually tested it 3 months prior, right? You couldn't. So, but this is definitely through the date. I was given this at the Sensi Magazine Mardi Gras party the other day. Guy running around just handing out joints. This whole 0.7 Veritas Lab, couldn't sell it in the stores, but you can give it away. No label on it telling me that it failed cannabis.
Tell us what it's called.
You don't know what it did. You know that it has like a certain percentage of a chance that it
Sun
did. Or something
Provisions
like
is
that.
the name on the bottom.
Mark it up.
The strain is super roof. I shit you not. Are you not even
Super Boop.
kidding?
Yes, ma'am.
This isn't a joke. I wouldn't lie to you. Super Boop.
That's
It
exactly
says
what
Super
it is.
Boop on it. I was mad. I was like, this is
It's
what
a-
I
it's
look like to you.
0.5 gram.
Do a
Super
review,
Boop
Rick. I
pre-roll.
want to see a review. Come on. Spark
I
it up.
love you, Bob Young.
Yeah. No. Well,
Okay,
let's talk
keep
about
it as a
sons and
prop, Rick.
daughters.
Don't light that up.
Let's talk about sons and daughters.
Yeah, so we got sons and daughters. Glenn, Josey's aligning herself more formally with the Redemption Foundation, which of course in turn is supportive of those other organizations plus a lot of other things. And
Yeah.
there's plans coming up for Hash Bash Weekend for Glenn and other stuff. And so that's what we want to talk about.
I'm so
Jose?
excited. Yes, Ryan Basor is my boss now. I am bragging. I'm so excited to work for the Redemption Foundation. We're doing a lot of really cool stuff there. Ryan is OG from the start, so I'm excited to have that opportunity. He'll also launch the Great Lakes Expungement Network with us. It's been an outrageous success. We are doing something really cool, and see, thank you. I knew he had to list what it was, Brandy. I wanted everyone to know. We're doing something really cool for Hash Bash Weekend. We're doing a treasure hunt. So we've got 6 provisioning centers on board, all giving free gifts. So I'm talking concentrates, edibles, pre-rolls, flowers, the whole shebang, or penny gifts, as my attorney will make me say. And we have
Can't
discounts.
give it away. So.
Yeah. All in compliance with local law. Must be 21 and older, the whole shebang, right? But gift discounts to local restaurants, in-store credit to local smoke shops. And the whole idea is when you get to Hash Bash, where do you go next, right? So you have all weekend to collect all the spots. And if you go through all of the map, you can get you can get entered into our giveaway, and the main prize is a 2-day stay in Tree Town itself, a trip on the Mary Jane tours. Anthony Fried is so nice to us. If you haven't been on that, it is literally a cannabis party bus. So not to brag, but it sounds like a super great time. We have 4 other prizes, all ranging from $500 to $75. We're selling these tickets right now for $30 for the maps. Next week they'll be in 6 different locations in Ann Arbor for purchase. They're $30. They have almost $70 worth of stuff on it without the giveaways. 100% of the money goes back to the Great Lakes Expungement Network. We struck gold at the network. So 100% of our interns and the volunteers that work with us have been through the network, got their record expunged, and they're like, wait, this is super cool. Crystal, who is new with us, came up with this idea. She's now our membership director. She runs shit. She is both bossy and the boss. She came up with this idea, and it has been phenomenal. So make sure that you go online. We're going to get it up on the show. It's sonsanddaughtersunited.org/hashbash-treasure-hunt. So say that 3 times fast.
I already forgot what you said.
See, there you go.
Hash Bash treasure hunt.
Hash Bash is the first weekend in April, so we're running these cards from March 31st till April 4th.
Slash what? Hash Bash?
And
What is it? Sons and Daughters United.
it's
Slash.
a Hash Bash. I don't know. Oh yeah, Hash Bash treasure hunt. Sorry, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, Jamie.
Hey, well, you got some good cannabis.
I sent it in the private chat, and I texted you.
Hash Bash Treasure Hunt, .org.
No, Sons and Daughters United.org/hash bash treasure hunt.
Oh, okay.
It's in
Yes,
that private chat.
RT's got me.
I do, because you
Thank
already threw it in
you.
the private chat. That's how I got it there.
See if this is right.
Thank you,
Yep.
Brandy. Thank you so much. So,
Is that right?
Jamie can put it on the. Yes, that's exactly correct.
maps went on sale today at the beginning of Jazz Cabbage. So we will sell these only online until the 23rd, and then you'll have to purchase them in person. Day of, they are $40. I only have a limited amount of maps, so come out and get them.
proceeds go to help people get their criminal records expunged. You get the ability to some reason to go around and check out some stuff around town and get some good product.
It's so cool.
And you can use it more than just the weekend, but if you happen to do it all in the weekend and get in the drawing, then you can get some other really good giveaways, which could be a $500 first prize down to a $75.
What a fun way to spend a weekend.
Fourth place prize, yeah. So it's it all just it's all fun and all goes to help people get their records expunged. So win-win.
And it was crazy. Like everybody was so responsive of it. We had a meeting with Arborside. Within 7 minutes, it ended with us just in silence. Like, yeah, we want to do this. This is awesome. This is the thing we want to do. So we're excited for this year. We're excited for next year. We're already gearing up, and it hasn't really started. So go online, purchase your map. It's beautiful. Go and visit if you're in Ann Arbor or around Ann Arbor. Go visit any of these shops and pick up your map in person. Get your record expunged and have all your friends expunge their records too while you're surfing sonsanddaughtersunited.org. Click on expungement and expunge your goddamn record.
So, Josey, real quick question about it. If you can't, you said there are 40 maps available. If you sell out of maps,
there's 500.
They're $30 before and $40 day of, right?
Okay. So 500 of them.
I'm buying like all of them for my mom though.
You need a map though. If you know that a particular dispensary is participating, do you need a map or can you still participate?
So you can purchase the map at the dispensaries, and the only way to get the free gift is to purchase the map. So you can purchase them online at the dispensaries, which are listed on the website, or you can purchase them in person at the Hash Bash. Purchase them in person at Hash Bash at the Monroe Street Fair, or any of the locations that Sons and Daughters is going to be at. So it'll be.
Sons and Daughters going to be at the Hash Bash Cup, Joe's?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to be right there at the front of the lobby.
Nice.
And if you don't know, the Hash Bash Cup is the best event. Not that I'm like biased because I like to smoke weed in hotel rooms, but also everybody I love is there, and it's so. Adam does a really nice job. I love being there. He's so good to us. We're taking nonprofit applications. Adam's doing a nonprofit village, welcoming Glenn, welcoming More Than Help. So anyone that wants to get involved, if you have a nonprofit, hit me up. Hit Adam up, hit up Amy. We all have the link. I should have
brought the Hero Project involved.
Yes, come on, man. Let's do it. I was talking to you specifically.
Hell yeah, I'm in.
Yes. The best thing about the Hash Bash Cup is Adam always makes space for us. He made space for us with my Legalize. I know he makes space for MiNORML every year. It's super great to be there, but Hash Bash is a big deal for us at Sons of Daughters United and for a lot of these charities. And so just remember that giving season happens once a year. People give money to charities traditionally, about 60% nationwide, between November and December, and we don't get money for the rest of the year. So if you see a nonprofit out there, go shop their store, give them a donation, go to Michigan ASA, see all of our friends, join the memberships. They're really doing the hard work.
Join Michigan NORML, MiNORML.org. You can sign up right online. It's super cheap, it's inexpensive, but you're participating in the change that we want to take place. So, what we're really seeing is Hash Bash Weekend. We talked about this many times, how it's evolved into a much larger thing than just an hour of power at the Diag. With Monroe Street Fair, by the way, Charlie Strackbein announced that they've expanded the Monroe Street Fair. City of Ann Arbor is allowing him to get even more territory under his control, so they're going to have more booths, more space, more people. The Hash Bash Cup, which is, at one point a 2-hotel thing, right? Adam, didn't you have to take over the hotel next door too?
Yeah, we used 2 hotels.
Yep. So 2 hotel takeover for the Hash Bash Cup. And these are huge hotels, people, Wyndham Garden hotels. So you're looking at big places. Plus the treasure hunt. I believe we had our friend with the Cannabis talking about driving people around. Anthony Freed with his service
Yes.
driving folks around too. And then typically on Sunday, although I'm not sure that they're going to do something like that this year, but typically on Sunday there's an athletes in cannabis seminar that they host at the Ann Arbor School of Medicine, things like that. So there are just so many different things. Oh, by the way, the Blind Pig in Saturday evening for entertainment. Hash Bash Cup this Saturday evening. That's one of your real big headliners, Adam, right? Who's going to be playing Hash Bash Cup on Saturday evening, sir?
Oh, they've got a guy named, old rapper named Freeway is coming through on his tour that he's on. So that's Saturday night. We generally have hip hop on Saturday. And he's kind of a big name in the old school hip hop world, and he was coming through. But to be totally honest, I won't. That's the only name I would announce. I mean, John Sinclair performs on Friday. My buddy RJ Spangler brings his orchestra in to open the thing up, but we actually don't promote the superstars that we have. We got a couple national touring acts coming in and things like that. We don't promote them because we don't use their names to sell tickets. That's not what we're about.
It's a nice surprise for attendees.
Yeah, it's kind of cool when you're sitting there and Obi Trice walks in the building and gets up on stage. You weren't expecting that, so that's kind of how we do it. It'll be a heck of a show, though. I can guarantee you that.
And Hash Bash Cup really is a whole hotel takeover where the entire hotel is 420 friendly. Smoke essentially anywhere you want, right, Adam? I mean, that's the whole thrust. There's vendors, there's music, there's food, a full kitchen, a swimming pool, hot tub. Rock it out.
It's in your room.
We've gotten to the point where if you know, you know, and if you don't, you probably should ask somebody.
Sorry,
we don't promote this event. We don't promote it at all. I mean, I hate answering questions about it on these lives.
I know. I'm so sorry.
I'm not going to ask anymore.
No, it's all right.
I said I'm sorry, and then he was like,
I'm happy we've gotten to that point because, there was a time where I would sit home and wonder. I mean, you're going to laugh about this, but my birthday's March 31st, and I would sit home and wonder if anybody was going to show up the next day at Hash Bash. Because I'd put a lot of work into it. And I just didn't know the weather was going to be bad. And I didn't know if anybody was going to be there. And we got to the point now with Hash Bash where 10 o'clock in the morning, there's too many people in town. And they're showing up no matter what the weather is. And, I mean, you could go virtual and we still showed up. No problem. But, so the reality is that Hash Bash Cup's gotten to the point where we just have to make it happen and enough people show up and it's a relaxing type event where I don't have to promote it. So I appreciate people talking good about it. I'm happy that people think it's a really cool event. It's really what I've always dreamed is that we had a place to do what we do. And
so Amscray and the Snake. Okay, gotcha. All right.
whoops.
Well, it's a part of it's a big and really good part of the whole weekend. So enough said.
Yeah. It is. No.
It's gonna be cool. The MacPods are playing with John Sinclair at the Blind Pig that Saturday too.
And probably Lath usually gets in there somehow for those things. I don't know if that's the case this year, but that's pretty common. Lath El Sadi.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're really talking about a return to events. For those who don't know, the last 2 years, the Hash Bash itself hasn't really been allowed by the Ann Arbor University of Michigan campus police. They really did not allow a permit for a large gathering due to COVID reasons. Well, so we took it digital.
The university didn't issue permits is what happened.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what happened. The police certainly allowed it. I stood there and smoked a joint next to the cop. So they allowed everything. But the university hasn't issued permits due to COVID.
Yeah. Right.
We didn't get permission for the Entheo Fest until the Thursday before, which was just a couple days before the fest was actually happening. So.
Which took place on the same location.
Same location, yes, exactly.
So Josey, just to pass along, somebody's having a hard time.
I see. I'm looking at it right now. Not that I don't love you guys. I'm not paying attention, but I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm gonna fix it though. I think it was Jen.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, she's getting a map. She's a
Hell
smart
yeah.
lady. I always knew it.
Mhm.
Somebody needs to take a nap.
No, she's getting a
No,
map.
she's getting a map.
Okay.
Here you go. Here's Brad's got an idea.
Oh, an Eventbrite.
Oh, nice. A link for the treasure hunt tickets for those people who want to participate in that.
Nice.
Did he find
You know,
it?
that's just another inventive way that we have here in Michigan of finding ways to integrate cannabis into our normal life.
Did
We
you
have a
see
cannabis tourism effort now. We got Josey doing treasure hunts. Goodness gracious.
And you actually one of the prizes in there, I don't remember where it falls. Maybe Josey, I'm sure Josey does, is like the cannabis tour. That's on the big prize. That's part of like the.
It is. It's
weekend
the big
in
prize,
Ann Arbor.
and you get a
Yeah.
hotel stay.
Yeah.
You get the hotel stay. You get $100 gift card for dinner. The whole shebang. Go back and see your friends that you met on the treasure hunt.
Wow.
Right. Unless it's like one of those movie treasure hunts where everybody tries to kill you and tries to get the only person that gets the treasure. So
There might be a little violence that breaks out. That's something
There's
that
plenty of
Right.
we're willing to
treasure.
take it out a little bit. You know.
sign me
We
up,
have
man.
We'll will this into
We have
reality.
more treasure than we have maps. So there's plenty of treasure. Everything's great. It's not like a movie.
All these stores, whether they're cannabis stores, the restaurants, the smoke shops, they were so like willing and anxious to want to like get involved with this. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was
process.
incredible to see it come to life. It's incredible to create something that my mom would enjoy, right? So my mom would never go to 6 different dispensaries and be able to spend $30, to visit all of them. And so I was really looking for something that was affordable for everybody, that we could all access, that still had value. But we're also consistently looking for creative ideas to raise money. If you or someone you know needs an expungement, please sign up. But if you or somebody you know owns a dispensary or a business and you want to get involved in helping other people get expungements, hit me and Jamie up. The response has been really astronomical, and every day we get several applications for people looking for the same thing, which is a chance for equal employment, for the ability to be a present parent, right? So I'm talking more than fair housing and getting a better job, but the ability to coach Little League, the ability to go to a daddy-daughter dance. All of this is dependent on your criminal record. And people deserve better. Your neighbors deserve better. Let's not forget what Shooty did for so long. There are more victims outside of the cannabis industry. There are victims all over that have records that were never, that were just created from poor and unjust policy. So please reach out to me. Don't be embarrassed by your record. Today's the day.
I mean, I wish
All
there
we
was
can
more we
tell
could
you
do for the
is
families
no.
of-
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I'm a proud no. Don't get me wrong. But the point is, if you have a felony record and you think it might be expungible, and even if you don't think it might be expungible, it's worth reaching out and asking, because
It can be
you
reviewed,
decide how
yeah.
laws are favored. So,
Yep.
I'm
The
going
lawyers-
for the governor. I'm hoping the governor will help me out.
The lawyers are working on it. The lawyers that get involved in this, they really take the cases to heart. So if there's a pathway towards getting you there, even if it's not the easy, quick one, you're looking at people that work with Josey. Josey holds them to task, man. She's like, "Arr!" And they're like, "Okay, Jose." So she gets out of her people what she needs to.
Yeah, that seems like a realistic understanding of it. We have had so much fun at the Expungement Network, and I just want to let everyone know on the 17th in Grand Rapids, we're doing an expungement resource fair with Redemption and Farmhouse Cannabis, or Farmhouse Wellness. So if you go to farmhousewellness.com/expungement, you can register for it. That way we can look at your record, see if you're eligible or not. Before you come there, that way we can get everything ready for you to go. You can send the
It's
application.
farmhouse with a PH or with an F? PHARM?
Great question. It's Farmhouse with a PH. So it's PHARM. Sorry. HOUSE wellness .com/expungement. Please register. Go tell all your friends. West Michigan don't play. I tell you that. If all my friends, like, I signed up all my friends immediately. Like 13 of our clients are just people that I know personally got cannabis charges. But I bet you guys know 13 or more people as well. So let's do it. Let's expunge them.
Crystal, who now works with us, who you mentioned before, and who's an integral part of the whole operation, whose concept it was. What's that?
She's a goddess, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yep. She went through this process and then was so enthralled with everything that now she's a big part of everything.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you look on social media, you see people who've had the records expunged posting about it, posing with their lawyer like it's a wedding photo, like an emancipation taking place. And you see, this is the other thing. You see the lawyers bragging about the expungements they've got for their clients, not for advertising purposes, just because they're so moved emotionally by the way that this is going to assist that particular person in their life and being able to step out of that. So we talked about 5512, Richard, way early in the show, but yeah, Joes, I mean, the expungements nowadays, it's a really big deal when people get that through their life.
Well, they don't believe they're going to get it. They don't believe they're going to get it when I tell them they're going to get it. They don't believe they're going to get it when they go to court. When that judge says they grant it, they don't believe it for 10 seconds. I mean, it has absolutely never been in their grasp. Remember that study said that only 5% of Michiganders would go through with expungement within 5 years of being eligible. And that came out from October of 2020, so just before we got these new laws in. What that means is 95% didn't, and they were eligible to do so. Is it because they didn't know about expungement? No. It's because it's fucking hard, and it's expensive. And the system isn't created for you to do things that are both hard and expensive. The system is created for you to work a low-end job and never truly excel in society, right? People don't go to jail one time or two times. Their re-entry rate is 73% all across America. And one more thing before I get off on a tangent is International Women's Day. 50 million women in the United States, your sisters, your neighbors, your best friends have criminal records. They're being denied jobs at a higher rate than their male counterparts. They're also experiencing real life trauma from long-term incarceration. So a shout out to all my lady friends who are doing their best.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
Good for you. Well, if I said shout out to all my lady friends, that would just be wrong message. So I'm glad you did it, Joe.
I would refer to them as women personally, but Josey understands all that stuff. Just want to go back to this real quick. This is an issue for all the bad bills during the election year. Yeah, probably not going to take a chance and look like idiots supporting shitty legislation. But lame duck, that's where things change because people aren't on the hook anymore. A lot of horse trading takes place.
After the election has already passed and before people's term expires, there's a couple of weeks there where they still can make law and have no consequences for it because they're out of office. So it doesn't matter. They don't have to live by the weight of their decisions, and they sometimes pass the worst freaking bills in that couple week long lame duck session between the beginning of November and the middle of December while they're still active.
2012.
And that's also, we talked about earlier. Adam specifically mentioned them clustering together a bunch of bills, some that we like, some that we don't like, and then pushing them through that way. That's a way to accomplish that by, having a little bit of a chocolate coating on a bitter pill, right? You're trying to make it palatable to somebody to say yes or to say no. We got zapped in 2014 when we had a bill that would have created a medical marijuana distribution system completely based on caregiver supply. On the very last day of session, we were told it was going to pass. We all gathered together at the Capitol building, dressed up nicely, ready to celebrate. And we were told that the Sheriff's Association of Michigan had made phone calls overnight and turned around the votes so they didn't have it. And they had completely sunk our efforts. And we slunk home from there defeated and unhappy.
Which goes to show you how important it is to make calls, because I do believe when this first batch of bills from Linder popped up and there was a concerted effort to actually do something about it, that the legislators said, oh shit, we don't know about this, but they know about this. And if we don't do if we don't do the right thing, we're going to hear from them. So they had to get educated, at which point, whoa, things slowed down, and we know the history here.
It did.
But I think it's very important that when these issues come up, that people remember that you got to pick up the phone, even if you just talked to these people the other day. You got to call them again and say, hey, something else came on my radar. I'm telling you, you got to understand this is all the same play from a different couple angles. This is how I feel about it. And we'll make a difference, because they're not getting calls from other people on other things.
Hey, just to add, 5512 too is getting the same treatment. Calling up people, letting them know some of the things that we discussed early on in the show. That's news to a lot of them, and starting to get poised to oppose that too. So
we don't need big money. We need lots of phone calls. I mean, we need big money. Don't get me wrong.
And the truth. I mean, it's cliche, but it does work for
Correct.
us, even in the face of these resources and connections and black ops and shit like that.
We offered a letter of resistance and opposition, Jamie, from the Michigan Cannabis Freedom Coalition, or was that from the Democratic Cannabis Caucus? Which one? We had that
5512. That was Cannabis Caucus.
The Cannabis
And
Caucus.
so that's the Cannabis Caucus of the Democratic Party, setting up meetings and using associations with the Democrats in order to help secure those 27, 28 votes needed against the supermajority. That's that deal. A lot of other groups and organizations, More Than Hope for one, going around talking to everybody, and other groups can start doing that too as this goes forward.
Yeah, it's just you can't make a promise based on for the community based on an individual conversation with a legislator. Nobody's empowered to make compromises based on what we all want. So
Please don't go to the just be careful what you say to the legislators.
yes.
I hear a lot of my friends go up there and start talking about recreational grows and how they're actually the problem, and none of this was a problem before. Please don't do that, because our
I've heard
friends
that in
that
some
grow
of the local
recreationally,
conversations too. That's not good.
Right.
our friends that grow recreationally still should grow recreationally, right? The conversation shouldn't be weed is bad ever. I want you guys to really just take to heart. Elections are coming up really soon. Who we vote for matters. Who you vote for in your township determines if you're getting a dispensary or not. If you get a consumption lounge, all my friends want to know why they can't smoke weed in their town. Like, where's this consumption lounge? Who you vote for in the city council matters. Who you vote for AG matters. So make sure that you're doing your research on that. Have real conversations on behalf of yourself, but avoid weird trigger stuff.
I'll tell you this, if you put the wrong people in power, even if you get a consumption lounge, they park a cop car right outside it and write down the license plates and follow people afterwards. It has to be the prevailing attitude of leadership in the community that says we permit this and you're not going to fuck with them. And that's where putting the right people in power work. We got a bad prosecutor out in Oakland County. You got a good prosecutor in, Jamie. I know you're trying to get
Well, a great example of a positive side of what you were talking about is Kalkaska. Part of the conversation of hiring people on the police force there is making sure that the attitude and the understanding of that cannabis doesn't get viewed with this intense focus of criminality or using it as the basis for starting investigations or things like that.
You're saying that's on the pre-screen for the police?
Yeah, the village president or whatever the structure is down there.
That's what the damn show should be about, Jamie.
He's a very cool dude, and I asked him very specifically about this, and that whole town has been extremely accepting of these opportunities. They want the revenue that it generates. They've been really pro for years, actually. They're trying to build something out of it.
But that story that you told, Jamie, that really underscores something, and that's that a lot of people in the law enforcement community are just recycled from other positions. And, good for them that they're continuing to work. But if they've got preconceived notions about what is a drug, what isn't a drug, what they should and should not allow, that's not consistent with where we're at in law right now. They shouldn't be in a position of enforcing shit. We've said that for a long time, but it didn't make any difference. They do whatever they want. But I love the fact that we've got a community up there that says, "Hey, if you're a pot hater, go be a waiter." See, that's not bad.
or go work for Bouchard.
Oh shit! Hey, by the way, Mike Cox's law firm, a former Attorney General Mike Cox, who preceded Bill Schuette as Attorney General in Michigan, his law firm is defending one of those companies in Traverse City that's arguing to try and overturn the ordinance that disfavored their client from receiving a license. So it's crazy how all of these government wheels turn and they all come back to cannabis. The former head of the Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation.
And we took issue with this guy for a little bit when he was Attorney General and the law was going around, and we wanted him to weigh in and say, yeah, you got to let people do this and whatever.
Yes.
we thought.
Shredder, that is his real name, yes.
Yeah, and so we were a little upset with him, but the reality is he didn't really want to do anything with it. He was somewhat neutral. He didn't want to fuck with it. He used to say, hey, if people wanted it, so I'm not going to do too much about it or whatever. And, while that frustrated us a little bit, we found out what really shitty Attorney General occupancy looks like when Bill Schuette took over.
After Mike Cox left office, Bill Schuette took over in January of 2011. The Michigan Association of Compassion Centers sued the Office of Attorney General 3 days after he took office because he agreed to share information from the medical marijuana database with the federal agents that were asking for it. Mike Cox had refused to do so, and Schuette gave it up like a freshman cheerleader to a senior quarterback. So we sued him, and then immediately 3 days later, they raided our offices at MAC here at Big Daddy's. They raided us blatantly, like a response, we told you. It was so obvious.
The address, of the organization, behind the lawsuit, the industry association behind the lawsuit, was raided, within a couple of days as the basis. I mean, so it seems more than coincidental that was the case, and it wasn't even an associated people who living there. It was simply owned by some people, and they were allowing their kids to use that location at the time. So a bunch of kids and stuff, and they went over there and raided a house filled with kids, not even involved really, not that's how I remember about it anyway. I don't know, Rick, is that close?
Well, they raided the Ferris household where there were firearms and there was cannabis. So there was a threat to charge people that were at the home of a 2-year felony. And Rick Ferris, who is my partner at Big Daddy's and in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Magazine, in order to save the rest of his family from having any trouble, he agreed to cop to a plea in order to clear them up and did time in county jail. Typically, you'd go to state prison, but because of his medical condition, he was kept in county for the entire duration, I believe. I'm certainly not an expert in that field, but for sure. Yeah, they raided not only our offices, but also the offices associated with that address, his home. So it was just a bad situation all the way around. Although the officers were okay at the dispensary where we were at that they raided us, they didn't know who was employees, who were patients. They didn't know anything. They were so caught flat because they got ordered to do it. They didn't do any research ahead of time. Schuette said, go get them, and they went.
Rick was running a separate department, but within the building, and that was the magazine, the first glossy cannabis magazine, Michigan Medical, or what was it called again?
Michigan Medical Marijuana Magazine, the
All
4
right.
M's.
Yep.
Yep.
Right. 4M Rick. Yeah, that's right.
Exactly
Still
correct.
Still have that email address.
I do, yes. Then the fact is, that was national news. You feel free to go on rickthompson.ninja, click on in the news, and then go to 2011 and see all of the different places in which Big Daddy's was featured on those particular news reports and things. It's crazy.
Jim Razor was there, the attorney.
Razor saved my ass in Chesterfield Township. God,
That's a separate story, but he was a good attorney, and he was hired by that organization, and he happened to be there at the time of the raid, and he did some video, and he couldn't represent them ultimately because he was considered a witness.
Paul Talenda. ended up finishing with us.
Also, Linda, who was going to join us at 5, he was in court though, so that all could have run over a little bit for him.
Nope.
Yep.
To
did take
Linda,
over.
Yep. Talinda helped us greatly in the raid, especially dealing with Oak Park, the city of Oak Park. We were the first licensed dispensary in the Oakland County, or the first dispensary in Oakland County. I don't want to say licensed. And at the city of Oak Park, they were tolerant, like a lot of places were at the start. But
I'll say, I think we said it a couple times here. Just really like that system that was going on. It was a
Great system.
It was a scenario in which I think something like about 100 patients a month got free medicine. It was a pretty big number, regardless. Point being, caregivers had patients. They were selective, this group,
Yep.
about who they worked with, so that the people who got this medicine could really benefit from it, really needed it. I mean, whatever that means, but obviously some are more financial difficulties to buy the consistent amount of medicine they need. Some have some conditions that are very debilitating, and they anyway. The point being that there's no question that people were benefiting from using this medicine, and then the cannabis not needed immediately for the patients were taken to these central locations and made available for other patients looking for medicine, and sometimes making connections with caregivers and stuff like that. And they also help people to learn how to grow and sold equipment. And
but if you look at what happened afterwards, the remainder of the MAC, most of the remainder of the MAC were raided. You look at the Amstils, they got raided a bunch of times. Poor Ryan Baso, of course, was raided. Maggie Cox got raided. There were, goodness gracious, a lot of different places that got hit because, being in the MAC, Randy up in
right around the same time. Yeah.
Randy Crowell. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a systematic assault on some of the people that formed that first trade association, and a disgusting number of people had to go to jail. It's wrong.
Yeah.
Never sits okay with me.
They weren't just like raids, though, right? They didn't just come in and arrest you and take you to jail. They came in there. I was 19 years old when I went to a house. It was tagged on Facebook. They were like, this lady her husband had been arrested. Her dog had been shot. She was cleaning the fucking blood from her family dog off the goddamn deck. Her kid in foster care, all the accounts had been suspended. She had no money, no way to contact anybody. I was 19 fucking years old. I met this lady I'd never met in my life. I got on my hands and knees and I cleaned the fucking blood with her. That's bullshit, right?
Yeah.
That is fucking bullshit. And I didn't know her. If somebody didn't tag me on Facebook, what the fuck was she gonna do? Who was going to help her, right?
Raid response, so important. Charmy Golson used to say so many times, raid response.
Everyone wants to be Charmy Golson when they grow up, right? Charmy Golson is, if you don't know, Charmy Golson is responsible for, or at least spearheaded, a very long-term campaign to reform asset forfeiture laws here in Michigan. It changed the lives of everybody. Up until then, they could just take all your shit and not write it down, and they didn't have to convict you of a crime, and they didn't have to give it back. And they didn't have to charge you with anything. All of
Civil
this
asset forfeiture, right? It was
yeah.
You had to go prove that the items taken were innocent.
We're talking like 2015. This isn't like 10 years ago. This is incredibly recent stuff. And Charmy Golson did that for us, and she got the fuck out of Michigan. But I'm so thankful for her and all of her work.
Paul was just on the show not that long ago, bragging about having the Lapeer County Sheriff's Department return to one of his clients stuff that they had seized under the same laws that Josey just described, where they can take your stuff if they suspected it was gained through any monies obtained through illegal methodology. And the way that they do asset forfeiture got reworked in 2014, 2016, but is still so wicked, still needs to be even further modified.
Civil asset
asset forfeiture, was that 2015, 2014?
I think it was 2015.
I forgot the year, but the kind of controversial current county prosecutor in Macomb, Lucido, was behind some of the. I mean, he's Republican.
Pete Lucido.
Yes, and a lawyer, and kind of libertarian-minded person, and so he was helpful in getting some good legislation started for some of that stuff. Controversial in other ways, but that was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're getting close to the end of the show, but what a great conversation we've had with Josey. And unfortunately, poor Jim didn't get a chance to get in very much, but we love him.
Sorry, Jim.
I'm fine. I love listening to you guys, and I'm sorry I missed the earlier part of the show talking about 5512.
Yeah. Yep. We talked about there's a component of people being concerned about federal funding being taken away if they don't do something like this. And we discussed, at least if it's through the agencies that we see commonly give this money, then the policy doesn't really relate to that being cut off. And had they even allowed for it on a limited basis under older policy, it still wouldn't work because any of it would be disallowed then. Anyway, you can watch the beginning of the show, or
I'm going to go back and view it for sure.
Yeah.
Of course, you can check that out live on YouTube or Facebook immediately. If you are listening to this on a podcast, you can check it out via Alexa, Spotify, or any of the other podcasting platforms that we broadcast to.
Hey, so Josey, anything you want to add on top of this discussion and make sure people know?
I'm going to fix the link. Please buy our treasure map. I'm so excited and thankful to be on Jazz Cabbage. Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, wait a second. We're going to announce the winners of the drawing for the people who win all these prizes and stuff like that on the Tuesday after Hash Bash Jazz Cabbage.
Nice.
Isn't that correct, Josey, or did you change your mind? I like the look on your
No, that's correct. I was just I've been playing this game where instead of like inhaling air, I've been inhaling this pen. I'm like stoned as shit. But yes, whatever Jamie says is probably right. We are doing the raffle the day after. So the 5th. Yes, that's great point. April 5th. Thank you, John. I'm really excited about this. This is quite literally one of the coolest things that we've been able to be a part of. I am talking about the Expungement Network, but probably the treasure map too. Buy your treasure map before I buy them all for my mom. Y'all know she smokes so much weed. It's hard to keep up.
And Glenn is doing something with Cooley Law School and Mike Nichols, the
I
DUI
did feel like I was
expert.
bragging if I was going to tell everybody, but now I guess I will. For all my attorney friends, paralegals, anybody working in the legal industry, we are so proud to be doing a DUI seminar with the city of Lansing. The mayor is going to be emceeing it, so I'm really excited. Come get all the knowledge on DUI expungement. It's March 18th, 1 to 3. You do have to be an attorney or involved in a law firm in some way. However, if you need a DUI expungement, hit me up. GreatLakesExpungementNetwork.org. Thank you guys for having me out here.
Thanks, Josey.
Thanks, Josey.
Jim, anything you want to make sure you get in for the end of the show?
I'm just excited about Hash Bash coming up April 2nd and all the events that are surrounding that day. So I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah.
But
Right on.
yeah.
And of course, the whole weekend starting April 1st.
Yeah.
I called Jim when I was looking for places, and he knows everybody and everything in Ann Arbor. So thank you, Jim, for
You're welcome.
He does.
I hope,
Even
I hope you get some good results.
Adam, want to last word us?
Yeah, today's Tuesday, right? Yeah.
I think so.
I got to get through this week. We got a couple more weeks to get to Hash Bash, so I've been kind of busy. We're just wrapping a few things up, and the phone doesn't stop ringing. So, I'm here. I'm staying plenty high. So,
All good stuff, man.
yeah,
All good stuff.
I appreciate it.
Anton?
Well, Josey, thank you for everything you're doing. I think you're doing amazing work, and you're impacting. You're actually making meaningful impact in people's lives, and I don't think many folks can say that. So thank you. I am also excited for Hash Bash. I think there's going to be a lot of good events this year. I think it's going to be a lot of good community, a lot of medicine, a lot of healing, and I'm excited for what's to come.
Right on. Rick, wrap us up if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say we're going to be interviewing Director Brisboe on 420 Post, but it won't be Wednesday. It'll be Thursday, same time period, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard, but it'll be Thursday instead of Wednesday this 1 week only to accommodate the director's schedule. So check that out. And, of course, on Thursday, you should watch either the Zoom or attend in person in Lansing, this special hearing on remediation. What you should take away from today's show is, first of all, there's so many opportunities for you to participate and do good to help existing systems like Glenn or Sons and Daughters that are already there, or the Hero Project that are doing things. And there are ways that you specifically can help with more than just your dollars by joining, like ASA or Michigan NORML. So this is a summer of great change for us. Be a participant in it. Let's make things happen together. And thanks for your continued patronage of our show. We love you.
Right on. All right, Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Peace.
Appreciate it.
No
Be
problem.
back next week. Good night.